Françaises, Français, mes chers compatriotes.
Dear fellow citizens,
Depuis l'attaque brutale lancée par
the
le
brutal
président
attack
Poutine
launched
contre
by President
l'Ukraine le
Putin
24
against
février,
Ukraine on February
les forces
24th,
russes bombardent
the Russian
Kiev,
forces have
assiègent
been
les villes
shelling
les
Kiev,
plus
have been
importantes du pays.
taking the main cities of the country
Des centaines de
by
civils
assault.
ukrainiens
Hundreds
ont
of
d'ores et déjà été
Ukrainian
tués.
civilians have been killed.
Des femmes et des enfants
Women,
ont
children
été tués encore ce jour.
have been killed even today.
Les jours qui viennent
In the
seront
next
vraisemblablement
few
de
days,
plus en plus durs.
Times will be
Des centaines de
increasingly
milliers de
difficult.
réfugiés fuient vers
Hundreds
la
of thousands
Moldavie,
of
la
refugees
Pologne,
are
la
fleeing
Roumanie,
towards
la
Moldova,
Hongrie,
Romania,
la Slovaquie et
Hungary,
progressivement
Slovakia,
le reste
Poland,
de l'Europe.
and gradually to the rest of
Dans
Europe.
cette épreuve sans précédent,
In
depuis
this
nombre de décennies,
unprecedented
nous
trial
nous tenons aux côtés de l'Ukraine.
that we have not seen for decades,
salue ce
we
soir
stand by
le
Ukraine.
courage du peuple
I would
ukrainien
like
qui
to salute the
résiste sous le feu des
courage
armes.
of the
Et en
Ukrainian
votre
people
nom,
who are resisting
j'adresse au président
under
Volodymyr
firepower.
Zelensky
And
le
on
soutien fraternel de la
on
France.
behalf of you, I would like to send to
aujourd'hui
President Zelensky
à la tête
their
de son
fraternal
peuple si courageux.
salute of France. He's at the head
visage
of
de
his
l'honneur,
brave and courageous
de la
people.
liberté,
He is the very face of
bravoure.
honor, of freedom, and of bravery.
Ni la France, ni
Neither
l'Europe, ni
France,
l'Ukraine,
nor
ni
Europe,
l'Alliance
nor
Atlantique
Ukraine,
n'ont
nor
voulu
the
cette guerre.
Atlantic Alliance wanted
Nous
this
avons au
war.
contraire tout fait pour l'éviter.
Quite the contrary.
Vous le
We
savez,
did
j'ai
all that
depuis
we could to
2017
avoid it.
conduit un
Since
dialogue
2017,
exigeant et
I've been
constant avec le
conducting
président Poutine.
a very
Et
constant
face à l'aggravation
and
des
demanding
tensions, je me
dialogue
suis
with
rendu à
Putin.
Moscou,
And
puis
with
à
the
Kiev,
worsening of tension,
les
I
7 et
went
8
to
février
Moscow
dernier
and to
pour
Kiev
rechercher des
on February
alternatives à un
7th and 8th
conflit
to
armé.
look for
Plusieurs
alternatives
autres
to armed
dirigeants
conflict.
européens ont
Several
d'ailleurs
other
accompagné cet effort.
European leaders
Le
supported
président
me in
des
this
États-Unis
effort.
d'Amérique a
The
manifesté
President
quant
of
à
the
lui
United
sa
States
disponibilité pour
also
négocier.
shown himself
Après avoir
willing to
rencontré
negotiate,
physiquement le président
having
Poutine
met in
en juin
person President
2021
Putin
à
in
Genève.
June of
C'est donc
2021
bien
in
seul
Geneva.
et de
So it
manière
is indeed
délibérée
alone,
que reniant
deliberately
les engagements pris devant la communauté des
reneging
nations,
on all the commitments
président
made to the
Poutine
community of
a
nations,
choisi la guerre.
President Putin opted for war.
Cette guerre
This
n'est
war
pas un conflit
is not a
entre
conflict
l'OTAN et l'Occident d'une part
between NATO
et la
and the
Russie
West
d'autre part,
on the one hand
comme certains
and
peuvent
Russia on the other hand, as
Il
some
n'y a pas de
would
troupes
have us
ni de
believe.
bases de l'OTAN
There are
en
no
Ukraine. Ce sont des
NATO
mensonges.
troops or NATO
La
bases
Russie n'est
in
pas
Ukraine. This
agressée,
is a
elle
lie.
est l'agresseur.
Russia is not
Cette guerre
being
est encore
aggressed,
moins
it
comme une
is the
propagande
aggressor.
insoutenable voudrait le faire penser.
It is even
Une
less
lutte contre
as
le nazisme,
unbearable
c'est un mensonge.
propaganda would have us believe, a
insulte à
fight
l'histoire
against
de la Russie et de
Nazism.
l'Ukraine,
It
à la
is a
mémoire de
lie,
nos
an
aînés qui ont
insult
combattu
to the
côte à côte
history of
contre le
Russia and
nazisme.
Ukraine and of our collective
Les
memories
dirigeants
who have
russes
fought side by side
s'en
against the
prennent à la
Nazis.
mémoire
The
de la
Russian
Shoah
leaders
en Ukraine,
are attacking the
comme ils
memory
s'en
of
prennent
the
en
Shoah
Russie
in
à la
Ukraine,
mémoire des crimes
just
du stalinisme.
as they are reneging
Cette
or
guerre
denying the
est le
crimes of
fruit d'un esprit
Stalinism
de
in
revanche.
Russia. This is
Nourri
the
d'une
result
lecture
of a spirit
révisionniste de
of
l'histoire de l'Europe,
revenge,
qui voudrait
a
la
revisionist
renvoyer aux
vision
heures les
of the
plus
history
sombres
of
des
Europe that would
empires,
send it back to
des
the
invasions,
darkest hour
des
of
exterminations.
empires, invasions, and
Cette violation
exterminations.
flagrante de l'intégrité
With
du
this
territoire et de la
blatant
souveraineté d'un
violation
pays
of
européen,
territorial integrity
la
and
France et
sovereignty
l'Europe
of
ont
a
répondu
European country, France and Europe have
unanimement,
responded
fermement.
immediately,
Nous
unanimously,
l'avons fait en
and with
étroite
firmness.
coordination avec
We have done
les
this
Britanniques,
in
les
close
Canadiens,
coordination
les
with the
Américains,
British
les
and the
Japonais et
Canadians,
tant
the
d'autres
Americans, the Japanese, and many other
D'abord,
nations.
en soutenant le peuple
First,
ukrainien
by supporting
par
the
des
Ukrainian
convois
people
humanitaires,
with
ainsi que par la
humanitarian
livraison de
convoys
matériel et
and by
d'équipements
delivering
pour se défendre.
equipment to help them
Ensuite, en
defend
agissant
themselves.
avec les autres nations
Then,
pour que les
by
dirigeants
acting in
russes
concert with other nations so
entendent
that
que le
the
choix de la
Russian
guerre mettrait leur pays
leadership
au banc des
can
peuples
hear
et de l'histoire.
that opting for
Une résolution a été
war
votée
will
au
make them a
Conseil de
pariah.
sécurité des Nations Unies
There was a
sur les violations du
UN
droit
Security
international
Council
commises par Moscou.
resolution adopted
Et cet
on the
après-midi même,
violation of international law
l'Assemblée générale des
committed
Nations
by
Unies a
Moscow.
condamné par un
And this
vote
afternoon,
écrasant
the UN General
cette agression.
Assembly has overwhelmingly
La communauté
condemned the
internationale a
aggression.
ainsi montré
The international
son
community thus has shown that
Les
it
équipes
is
sportives de Russie
united.
ont été exclues des grandes
Russian
compétitions
sportsmen and
internationales
sportswomen
et
have been
nombre de grands
excluded from
événements
international
sportifs et culturels ont été annulés.
athletic events, and many
Nous
such
continuons
competitions have been
continuons
cancelled.
un travail
We
acharné
have
afin
continued
de
to
conduire
work
sur tous les continents
tirelessly so
les
that we
nations à
can
condamner l'invasion,
lead all
à
nations
exiger le
across the
cessez-le-feu
world to
et le
condemn the
respect
invasion, to
des
demand a
opérations
ceasefire
humanitaires
and the
sur le
respect
sol ukrainien.
for humanitarian
Nous avons
operations
pris de
on
manière
Ukrainian
rapide et
soil.
proportionnée
We have taken,
des
in
sanctions à
a
l'égard
very
de
swift
la
way, in a
Russie et de ses
proportionate
dirigeants.
way, sanctions
Les
against
avoirs de
Russia
plusieurs
and its
centaines de
leaders.
personnalités russes
The
proches du
assets
pouvoir
of
ont ainsi
Russian
été
leaders who are
gelés en
close to
France
power
et à
have
l'étranger.
been frozen in
Plusieurs
France
grandes
and
banques
in other
russes ont
countries.
été
Several
exclues
major
des systèmes
Russian
de paiement
banks have been
internationaux,
excluded from
rendant
international payment
impossible
systems,
nombre de
making
transactions et
many
entraînant
transactions
la chute du
impossible
rouble.
and leading
Les
the
organes de
ruble
propagande
to a
russes
free fall.
viennent de
Russian
cesser d'émettre en
propaganda
Europe.
organs can no longer
Sur le
broadcast
terrain,
in Europe.
nous nous sommes donné les moyens de
In the
protéger nos
field,
ressortissants
we have
en organisant le
made
transfert de notre
what is
ambassade
necessary to protect
d'une
our
ville à l'autre
nationals,
en Ukraine
organizing the
et en
transfer
permettant
of our
à tous les
embassies to a
Français
different
ou
city in
binationaux qui le
Ukraine,
souhaitent
and by making
de
it possible
pouvoir
for
quitter le
all
pays
French
dans les
nationals
meilleurs délais.
to leave
Et
the
je veux ici, en
country
votre
as
nom,
quickly as
remercier
possible.
l'ensemble des diplomates,
In your name, I would
policiers,
like to thank
militaires et
all the
agents de l'État
diplomats,
qui
law
continuent de mener cet
enforcement
effort et prennent en charge nos
officers and
compatriotes
others who
en
are conducting
Moldavie
this effort
et
and
sur
who are
les
taking
principaux
charge
points de
of our
sortie
nationals
du
in
territoire ukrainien.
Moldova and other
Je remercie aussi l'ensemble
points
des
of
journalistes
exit of
qui
Ukraine.
couvrent
And I'd like to
avec
thank
courage
all of
le
the
conflit
journalists who are covering
et
with
œuvrent
such
ainsi à la
courage
liberté
the conflict
d'information
and who are
de tous
working
les
for freedom
citoyens.
information for all citizens
Enfin, nous avons
all over the
participé
world.
à l'effort
Finally,
dans le cadre de
we
l'OTAN
were
pour
involved in the
protéger la
effort
sécurité
under
et la
the
souveraineté de
umbrella
nos alliés
of
européens
NATO to
en
protect
renforçant la
the
présence
sovereignty
militaire que nous
of
avons déjà
our
dans les États
fellow
baltes et dans la
citizens
région.
by reinforcing
Ainsi,
our presence in the
plusieurs
Baltic
centaines de
states
soldats
and other
français
countries
sont
of the region.
arrivés
So several
hier
hundred
sur le sol
French
de la Roumanie.
soldiers have arrived in Romania as of yesterday. There were diplomatic initiatives, sanctions against the political and economic leaders of Russia, and support to the Ukrainian population will continue and be strengthened. And the objective is to make fighting stop. And yet, we are not at war with Russia. We all know what our ties are with this great nation, the Russian nation, that made such tremendous sacrifices during World War II to save Europe from the abyss. We stand by all the Russians today who refuse that this outrageous war be conducted in their name and who have the courage to stand up for peace and who are speaking out in Russia and elsewhere. This is why, while I'm constantly talking to President Zelensky, I have also chosen to maintain contact as long as it is necessary with President Putin in order to endeavor to convince him to lay down weapons, to help as France can in the ongoing negotiations, and to prevent any spreading of the conflict to the extent that we are able to do so. The balance on our continent, as many other aspects of daily life, are already feeling the impact of this war and will experience real upheaval in the months to come. Europe will be shaken by this, and I will be talking about this. Hundreds of thousands of refugees coming from Ukraine will be welcomed on our continent. France will do its part. And I wish to thank all of our towns and villages who have started to be mobilized. Thank all of our voluntary organizations who are working to welcome the refugees in the best possible conditions. We will get organized. We will welcome and provide protection to those who are coming to our soil. France will welcome children who are forced into exile, separated from their parents who have left to fight. And we will do this in close collaboration with non-governmental organizations that are already at work in Ukraine and in our country. Agricultural, industry, other sectors of our economy will be impacted either because they depend on raw materials imported from Russia or because they export to Russia. Our growth will be affected. There's no doubt about it. The increase in the price of gas and oil and raw materials will have an impact on the purchasing power. The cost of gasoline, the cost of heating, the cost of many products and commodities will increase. So given these economic and social consequences, I have only one compass, and that is to protect you, to help the most exposed economic sectors, finding new outlets. And to this end, I have talked to some of our partners in the United States, in the Middle East, in Europe. We will find the appropriate response to the disruption of trade and to the increase in prices. I have asked our Prime Minister to develop over the next few days a plan for economic and social resilience to face all of these problems. But we cannot be under any illusion. These events will have immediate consequences in the next few weeks. They are a signal that our era is changing. The war in Europe is no longer just part of our history manuals. It is happening to us now. Democracy that was considered as an undeniable regime is being challenged before us. Our freedom, the freedom of our children, can no longer be taken for granted. It means that we have to fight for it, and fight for it every moment. And we must respond to these tragic events with historic decisions. So we will invest in our defense as decided in 2017, and we will continue with its strategy of independence and investment in our own economy, in something that had already been started during the pandemic. Europe shows, facing this trial, a remarkable degree of unity. Now we must accept to pay the price of peace, of freedom, of democracy. We must invest more to be less dependent on other continents, to be able to decide, to make our own decisions. In other words, to become a more independent, a more sovereign power. First of all, an economic power. We can no longer depend on others to feed our people, for our health care, to finance ourselves. And this is why all of the decisions that we took with the European Recovery Plan means that we have to promote a new economic model that is based on independence and progress. Energy independence, we can no longer depend on others, and in particular on Russian gas for transport, to heat ourselves, to run our factories. And this is why we decide for France to develop renewable sources of energy and building new power plants. I will defend a strategy of European energy independence. A power for peace. We can no longer depend on others to defend ourselves on the ground, in the air, at sea, in space, or in cyberspace. On this point, European defense has to progress forward. I will be bringing together on March 10th and 11th in Versailles the heads of state and government of European countries for a summit that will discuss these matters and reach decisions. Europe has shown that it is united, that it is determined. It has entered into a new era, and we must continue. Dear fellow citizens, the war in Ukraine is a profound break for our continent, for our generations. And I know that you're legitimately concerned. We are mobilized. It will mean that we will have to take decisions, and I shall report to you. The war is also disrupting our democratic life, and the electoral campaign that is officially starting. It means that we will have a very important democratic conversation for the whole nation. But it means that we will still come together on what is most important. I know I can count on you. I know how much you cherish freedom, equality, fraternity, and the role of France in the world. And I will forever defend all of these and carry them high for all of you. Long live the Republic, long live France.